In this chapter, the number of shares are going to kind of be tricky for you, so I'm just going to make you this quick little video with one of the problems. So first thing you need to do, or what I've done here, is create an Excel spreadsheet, and I have the common stock T account over here, and I'm only showing shares, and then I have the treasury stock T account over here, shares again. And you're going to start with the beginning balance, which is given to you in the balance sheet. So in this particular case, it's 6,500 shares. So I'm just going to plug this in here. I don't care about the dollar amount as much as I care about the shares for this one. Because there's so much going into and out of the treasury and common stock account, it's best to just use the T accounts, because then you can kind of keep track step by step as shares are issued and then reacquired, etc. So February 13th, in this particular case, they issued 5,600 shares. So when you issue shares, you increase the number of shares outstanding. And now what I did was sum here, so I added up the beginning balance plus the number of issued shares on February 13th. And this gives me my balance before the stock dividend, which happens in June. So, sorry about that, happens in August. So August 9th, they declared and distributed a 10% stock dividend on the common stock. So 10% stock dividend, sorry, that was a different example I was helping somebody with. 10% stock dividend, it's going to add an additional 10% of the shares that are currently issued and outstanding. So currently there are 12,100 shares outstanding, which is above, and they're issuing a 10% stock dividend. If they had treasury stock or balance in their treasury stock, those shares would have been netted out because you're only using the number of shares outstanding. So we're going to take the balance above times 0.1, which is 10%. So it's going to add an additional 1,210 shares on August 9th. For October 26th, they reacquired 1,100 shares as treasury stock. So now we're taking them off of the open market, and now we're going to hold them as a company. And treasury stock has a normal debit balance. So when we reacquire shares, it increases the treasury stock with a debit. So 1,100 shares are going to be added, it's reacquired, in the treasury stock account. So notice they're still issued, but now we're reducing the number of outstanding shares. At November 20th, now they're going to sell an additional 600 of those shares. So we're going to credit the account, the treasury stock account, for those 600 shares. And now the treasury stock balance is going to go from 1,100 shares to 500 shares. And the last journal entry, which is always going to be the hardest one, it's the hardest one for my students in class to figure out the number of shares, just because there's so many moving parts with this particular problem, is figuring out the number of shares outstanding, because that's going to determine the amount of your cash dividend. So you take the number of shares issued, which is from your balance above in your common stock, so beginning balance plus the issued shares plus the stock dividend shares less the treasury stock shares that are still held by the company. So 13,310 minus the 500 shares in treasury stock gives you 12,810 shares outstanding. To figure out the value of your dividend, we're going to plug in, for this example, it was 30 cents per share. So 30 cents per share times 12,810 shares outstanding gives you a dividend of 3,843.